Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Millionaire Brand Creation. I'm your host, Michael Banovac, and I just wanted to introduce a man that really doesn't need a lot of introduction. A lot of you know Ramon Casaus. He's part of our EXP family, but more importantly, he's a young, charismatic guy that knows how to go out there and do some cool stuff. So without further ado, Ramon, what's up, my friend?
Michael, good to see you. Well, good to hear. I mean, I guess we've talked recently, but we haven't seen each other in person in a long, long time, man.
That's right. That's right. Well, the reason I wanted to have you on today is, this is about branding. This is about learning from people's stories, at a young age. And if you can, tell us back into the past, what got you into entrepreneurship? What gave you that drive? And where did this all come from you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, when I was in college, after I got through my first couple of years of just kind of screwing off, you start getting a little bit more serious, and I was wanting to get involved in real estate, and I ended up getting an internship and position with a real estate investment trust, publicly traded. Um, It was a REIT, for those of you who know what that is, and, it was awesome. I mean, I moved to Tampa, Florida. I was 21 years old, corporate real estate job. I mean, it was a ton of fun. I learned so much from that company, but what ultimately drove me into the entrepreneurship world and being self-employed was I just felt my creativity and my drive to do things outside of my job, I just felt it, like, dwindling. So, for example, I always knew there was something that I was gonna do, that it wasn't gonna be this. And then when I saw, the limited upward mobility, or at least it takes a lot of time to be promoted and be paid more, um, I just wasn't into waiting, and then the other side of it is just the 9 to 5 part just killed me. Like, it's crazy because I just can't imagine asking for time off anymore. Like, it's not even something I would ever even think about that before I had to, "Hey, is it okay if I go do XYZ?" So, that was really what drove me into, like, "Well, what should I do now?" But I think even before that, I my dad is self-employed, and so
Mm,
growing up, you don't have a very traditional upbringing. He comes home late, leaves early, weekends or work days. That's just not like, Sunday, sure, but even then, it's really work day. Um, and you just see a different type of work ethic, and you also see the ebb and flow of good times and bad times. And I think that just naturally, I was just always drawn to that. I mean, I always want to be like my dad, but I was definitely drawn to the self-employment life just because I grew up around it. It just seemed normal to me. It wasn't something I was doing that was uncomfortable.
So, what was that first leap of faith? What was that first venture that kind of got you into business in general after that REIT experience?
Yeah, it's funny, people are like, "What got you into real estate?" Or what? "Oh, I just love helping people and all that." Me personally, my dad told me a story of a real estate agent that made $25,000 commission because my dad builds custom homes. So the real estate agent brought a client who ended up building a home with my dad, so they paid him a commission. And he told me they paid him 25,000. I was like, 25 what? For doing what again? And he explained the whole process, and I'm like, maybe there's something here. This 25, he did tell me obviously that, that's not going to be your first day in real estate or your first week or first month. But yeah, you get into the game and you know what you're doing. This is very common to make this type of money. So that's what honestly piqued my wheels turning. And said, maybe I'm going to get my real estate license. It was because I learned early on what the earning potential was.
Mm. And then getting into it, what was it that gave you that fire and that drive to continue? Because I'm sure a lot of people listening in or that will listen in are going to tell you it's not as easy as it seems. And obviously, it's not always as easy as a profession as other people profess. You don't snap your fingers and one day make
Yeah.
$100,000 in a month. What was it that gave you that drive to want to persist and continue?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's twofold. I think really just growing up, like my dad definitely instilled a lot of work ethic in me. It just, whether it was, chores around the house, whether it was working on his job sites, there was never a time where I was just like chilling, doing nothing, right? I was held to kind of a standard to work. Like, you do the dishes, you take the trash, you clean the dog shit, you pick the weeds out from around the house, you get on the job site, you put all the scraps in a pile, right? You make it look clean, you sweep the concrete before the end of the day with all the sawdust. Like, it was just what I did always. And so I think that those things they definitely translated. Having a dad who showed me how to work hard, that was probably the most important. But I think the other one was, there was a time where I wanted to get into commercial real estate. And honestly, my draw to
Mm,
commercial real estate was because I wasn't succeeding in residential. And so what happens
mm,
is when you're not succeeding, you think that the brokerage, the team, the industry changing is going to change something. And the reality is that, I sat there and I thought about it right when I was going to call my qualifying broker at the time to quit and tell them I'm going, because the commercial guys, I mean, they have tricked out Raptors and guns and Rolexes. And I'm like, oh yeah, I like these guys. These guys I want to do this. And I thought about it. I was sold. And then I said, all right, man, well, you just got to be real with yourself. Like, give yourself an honest grade on your effort. You know your abilities, you know what you're capable of. What are you really putting into this? And the reality was I gave myself a C minus. I was getting
hmm.
below average results, and the reality was that I was putting in below average effort. And so that day I made a conscious decision, like, okay, I'm gonna go all in on this. And I think when I say go all in, I think for me what the key was, because you hear that like go all in, or I'm gonna put all my eggs in one basket. But for me, I feel like there is a little bit of pressure on young males that are ambitious, like that you should already have it figured out by the time I was 23, 24. At least that's how I felt. And you never want to look like you're broke or look like you're struggling or look desperate for business. But I had to kind of let that ego go and let that pride go and go, like, okay, I am broke. Like, let's just
Yep.
let's just I
Let's
don't
be
have
honest with ourselves here.
let's just be honest. And so instead of trying to act like I have it all figured out, I'm just gonna act like I don't and go and drop my ego, and like I'm gonna go all in. And it really comes down to just not being scared to ask for business and try really hard. Like, some people think that
Mm.
when they try really hard, if you fail, like that somebody else is watching or laughing at you, when the reality is it's just all in your own head. And so, yeah, I just kind of let my guard down, and I just started back at the fundamentals on all the trainings and really paying attention and watching the videos and listening to the coaching and getting on YouTube and like studying what other people are doing, and then just start doing it myself. And one thing led to another. And here we are.
So when you look back, do you have any regrets? Would you do something differently? And then the second part of that question is, when you talk to agents from all walks of life, what do you tell them to do now if their business is not excelling or at the pace that they want it to be?
So it's not a regret, but it's something I go back and forth with if I would have gone to college or not. Um, Everyone's situation's different, but that's one thing that I do go back and forth on. Regret, I would say, just so one big regret is that I kind of wanted to do things my way, and I thought,
Mm,
like, and to an extent you do have to do things differently to stand out. But what I overlooked was that people who had the success I wanted, I didn't follow that blueprint. Like, I kind of took the wrong
mm,
way around, where if I would have just, again, it was more of a pride and ego thing, thinking that I'm better at the time or that I know more, I'm more capable. I should have just followed some very basic playbooks up front. I would have got ahead faster. And I think the other regret was just, and I see this happen a lot with real estate agents, is I got involved in property management. I got involved in, we have done some flips. We opened a brokerage. We were doing coaching programs. I mean, there was a time where I got spread really thin, and I realized that I really wasn't progressing at the speed I wanted in any area. And so
mm.
it would also be to stay focused on one thing and become the best at that one. And I know you hear that a lot, but that one thing, when you get good at it, so many opportunities, when you get into that upper threshold of professionals at that one thing, so many more opportunities come your way. It's easier to keep growing. You probably have the capital to invest and start like actually making sizable returns. I would have done that differently. I probably would have not gone in so many different directions. I would have just stuck with real estate sales teams, which is what I'm back at that now after learning, but I should have just stayed doing that the entire time. Um, and I think to answer your last question, I actually had a call with my team today, Thanksgiving call, and what I explained to them is that I talk to real estate agents all over the country every single day. I almost have 3 appointments a day at this point, and all walks of life, ages, ethnicities, backgrounds, and most agents have never actually gained traction in their business. That's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
what you said. They're looking around, and so the way I equate it is to exercise. Um, you can take all the supplements, you can take the weight loss, testosterone, pre-workout, BCAA or whatever the hell this BCAA protein, fish oil, whatever you take. You could take every supplement. There's no supplement for getting your ass in the gym, hitting the treadmill, doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, and I mentioned those specific exercises because it's the fundamentals. It's the basics. And many agents are trying to build on a foundation that they never mastered the basics, right? It's like going to the
Mm,
gym and trying to do an advanced workout. It's like you don't even know how to do the exercise the right way. Like you can have the formula to do the advanced workout, but it's not going to work for you because you never did the fundamentals to get to that point. The results aren't going to
mm-hmm.
equate the same. So a lot of agents are looking for a magic pill. And in this business, it's like lead generation, or like I'm going to buy something or do some click funnel, and I'm going to have, well, that's the same thing as saying, I'm just going to take a weight loss supplement and I'm going to get the results I want. We all know how that works out. It doesn't. And so I think that going back wherever you're at and going back to the basics the same way I said I did, like, okay, I'm going to start studying this. I'm going to start like take everything I tried, throw it out the door. I'm just going to start building from scratch. And then once you get good at the fundamentals, just like you get in good shape, you start adding some supplements to it and some more advanced techniques. Now the results get extreme, right? But
Mm-hmm.
most agents are going
Mm-hmm.
for the extreme results in the supplements. But the reality is that there is no supplement for hard work in building a foundation. And I think that summarizes probably 80%, if not 90% of the industry.
I think that's a really good point, actually. And you and I have talked about this a lot, and that's why people listening in, especially on the back end. What do you think at this point in time, at this point of the economy, is the easiest road for everyday people to create generational wealth in their lives?
Yeah. Well, there's a good saying that says, "Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait." And I'll be honest with you. I think when I started, I made a lot of money in my first couple years, especially my second year, more money than I thought I'd make. And I spent a lot of it kind of going through the learning curves of brokerage, property management, and I ultimately ended up with, for the most part, the result I wanted from a business standpoint. But no, it was ever really very sexy to me investing in real like single family or like duplexes. I was like, I'm rolling in dough, right? I'm making 30, 40 grand a month. What am I going to do with an extra 500? Like that's like my bill at the restaurant. It's like, what am I going to do with
Right.
that? And the reality is that if I would have taken that money and invested, that was 6 years ago. When you
Mm-hmm.
actually calculate the equity, the cash flow, the equity appreciation, the cash flow, and the debt reduction, and then the overall leverage of having those assets, um, 6 years goes by very, very fast. And I feel like while what I've learned is that it's usually the not sexy, not very thrilling, not very appealing, boring, monotonous fundamentals and strategies that usually yield the highest returns. And so
That is so true. That is so true.
yeah, and so I think whatever real estate asset you understand, or wherever you're positioned in the country, right? Like if you're buying, real estate on the coast, if you're, Central America, you're in the Midwest, you're in a vacation town, whatever your strategy is figure out what it is, but start somewhere. It's just like the fundamentals, right? Like you get to $1 million property that you're selling as a real estate agent. Well, just start with the $50,000 piece of land. It'll get you to that point, but yet it's like trying to build again a foundation on something that you're trying to build on a weak foundation. You got to start somewhere. I wish I would have started a lot sooner, just investing in basic single family homes. And then I would have a
Mm,
lot, I'm not going to say my net worth would be more, but I can definitely tell you that I would have probably been very pleased with those investments I made.
hmm. Now, why do you think, because you deal a lot with agents, why do you think a lot of agents focus on the brokerage end, the buying and selling of properties, but they themselves don't invest fully in real estate, having all the knowledge that they do have? What's that fundamental disconnect that you've seen in a lot of your agents?
Fundamental disconnect. Well, going back to our talk about gaining real traction in your business, I think that a lot of times financially they're not capable.
Mm,
I think that's number one. And maybe financially not capable is the wrong word. Maybe they're capable, but they just don't know they're capable. And I think also the feel, we talk about this, me and you've talked about this. I'm like, yo, if someone wants a couple grand, I'm not your guy. I spent that on real estate already. Like we I don't look at cash as like cash is just like it's good, and you definitely want to have cash, there's no doubt. But having viewing an investment not as a risk, like obviously there are risks involved, but viewing it as something that's going to help you in the future, instead of like, oh, I don't know, like I have 30 grand, I just hold on to it because that's a safety net. And it's like the reality is there's no appreciation of that 30 grand, right? It's just 30 grand. And so by spending it, you're helping that 30 grand grow. But a lot of people don't look at it that way. They look at this cash as safety. And don't get me wrong, at some level you do need to have some dry reserves. But I
yep.
think that's where agents get tripped up, is they don't have enough of dry powder, of the cash to go invest. And then when they do, they're still viewing cash as their safety, right?
Mm,
And I think that's the fundamental disconnect, is that having no cash doesn't really scare me that much. I mean, not at all, actually. Because you start learning, again, getting back to getting more advanced, you start learning about lines of credit, you start learning about the Burr method, you start learning about the tax benefits, you start learning how those real estate assets actually benefit you so much more than just having that cash sitting on the sidelines. I think that's fundamental disconnect.
it's funny. Andy Saley, right? I know Matt does, who's
Yeah,
our producer on the
yeah,
call. Well, we had an impromptu Instagram live actually a couple days ago, and what he said I actually really liked. He says, from zero to $1 million, you shouldn't really have a lot of savings. All your savings should go to investment capital. And he says
yeah,
anything that you think of for the next 20, 30, 40 grand hit, those should be your down payments on real estate acquisition, period. If you have more
yep,
than 10, 20, 30 grand, that needs to be your down payment for your next deal. So I thought that
100%.
was very interesting. Then he said, after you get to a million to 10 million, 92% of the American populace who are millionaires are single digit millionaires, right? And the reason they are that way is a lot of them right now during this economic cycle are going to get squeezed because they don't have enough liquidity to maintain and grow their $1, $2, $3 million, net worth living. So he said from 1 to 10 million, you actually need a lot of cash, surprisingly enough, because you need to make sure that you can grow and maintain those acquisitions on a timely manner. And then he says, once you get past 10, 10's the magic number where you don't need any cash at all because your cash flows will sustain and help you grow and weather those storms. What do you think of that?
I think that's really accurate. And I think that, like, especially on the road I think what he's also talking about is the idea of you trade your time for money, and then at some level you trade your money for time. right? And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what you're talking about at 10 million is at 10 million, you're just trading your money for time at that point, right? But before leading up to that point, and especially that 0 to 1 million net worth, you're trading your like just worry about gaining traction and growing your income. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
that's like one of the parts I see a lot of people and even agents, they want to invest in real estate. And then I'm like, well, how many houses do you sell a year? I sell 10, sell 12. Now again, nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying that if you want to invest in real estate at any extent that's going to make an actual dent in your net worth, you need to be clearing quite a bit of money. Have some, you got to be happy $200,000-300,000, have 100 grand in cash you can spend. That's where it starts getting interesting from a real estate investment standpoint. But when you're trying to build passive income, but you don't have any income, it's kind of hard.
It's very true. So again, this is what I ask all of the guys that come on and gals. If you had to do it all over again, let's say your brokerage was stripped from you, your partnerships, all your little money making activities, how would you do it all over again if you had to start today and you had zero?
Well, would I still have a real estate license?
But you'd always get one.
Yeah, well, I would get my real estate license, and I would do exactly what I did my first couple years, and I would just grind, and I would not necessarily go after luxury listings because it's not really my specialty, but I'd go out right at that average or a little bit above the average sales price whatever market I'm in, and I would just set up a system around listings, and I would turn and burn real estate transactions until I made enough money to start investing in more things again. But that's the one thing I know, like it for sure will never fail you if you
Hmm.
run your business the right way from a real estate sales perspective. You will make money. That's a proven fact. And so I would go right back to that, and I'd rebuild it again from there. And I've considered doing that a few times, to be honest with you, not because I needed to, just because it just sounds fun. Like
Yeah.
when you start at zero, it's not that scary to go back to zero. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, okay, let's do it
And
again.
then when you have a few bucks, if you have a few bucks in the bank, it is excruciatingly painful to lose. That's the problem because you have something to lose. I know we've talked about that before. The next question I wanted to ask you is how important is tracking, creating a cash flow statement, and making sure that individuals are tracking their net worth?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in order to understand, like first you have to understand your net worth. I think that's the most, you got to understand it first, because if you don't understand it, it's hard to predict where it's going to go. We don't really know what it is, right? Like real estate agents especially, they don't know what they net last month. It's like, well, how are you going to
Mm-hmm.
figure out what you net this year or next year? You don't like, you have to start there. And then I think tracking it is a matter of getting very realistic about what's your and being conservative too, especially on your earnings, because it's better to have more earnings and have more available cash flow than be having these lofty goals and not being able to hit them.
Yes.
It's a little discouraging. So it's a long game, and you're building. And so just getting very clear on, okay, again, I think this goes back to investments. Um, what investment am I trying to make? Getting very clear on that, because people say I want to invest in real estate. I'm like, well, that is a very lofty ambition because there
Broad
is a lot
statement.
of real estate. It's a broad statement. So first identify what you want to buy. So if you're like, okay, I want to buy a single family rental that net cash flow $300 a month, $400, whatever the positive cash flow is on it. I want to buy one a quarter. It's going to be $500,000 for each one, and I'm going to have to put down 20%. Okay, what do you? How much cash to start with the 20%? Well, how much do you need now to have available cash flow? Okay, does that support that or not? Starting off, right? It's just very
Right.
basic, and I think that that's where, again, going back to my point, when you're watching this, I tell you right now, I wish I would have done the more. I was like, oh, that's boring. I'm just gonna go make as much money, and then I'm gonna go like, no, 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 no. Track it and do it the right way. And it's like the slow. It's like what's that? Slow and steady wins the race.
Tortoise
I
and the
think
hare,
that's
man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so the tracking is huge. And I mean, not only from your net worth, but just understanding your business. Like, I mean, my specialties in real estate teams, and I mean, there's very basic but powerful equations to understand the profitability and predictability of your real estate team. It took me a long time to figure out because I was so not in tune with the boring stuff. But really, I realized that that boring tracking, how you determine number one, are you actually achieving anything, much less,
Right.
and then incrementally, like, where do I stand today? What's my power financially? And I don't think a lot of people know that, have any clue. But again, it starts with going through your bank statement. Are you getting a P&L personally on your business? Like, how is it categorized? What are your, I mean, it's, you have to start somewhere, I think, as the point out. I'm kind of rambling, but it's like, it's, you start at the most basic thing possible, your personal income, and then you build from there. And I think that it doesn't have to be this elaborate, like 30, 40 page pro forma, but just some very basic metrics on what do you want your net worth to be, and then do the reverse math on how you get there. And it'll tell you how much you have to earn to do so. But I think the number one, at least what I've seen, and for myself too, is like, you got to play the income game for a significant amount of time. A lot of people want to play the
Mm.
investment game. Income game
Hmm.
is the one that most of us should be playing, until even you get to a point like yourself where you have enough cash flow to support more investments just from the ones you've made. That's a different scenario. Most people don't have 5, 10, 15, 20 grand of cash flow coming in, whether they get up or out of bed or not. But to get to that point, you got to play the income game first, because that's what you did. You played the income game
Hmm.
big time, and all that money, invested it wisely. And so now it's a little bit of a different scenario. But for most people starting out, you just focus on the rest will come, but you got to have the dry powder. It's just that simple. There's no way
You know,
around it.
I heard an interesting quote today, and I wonder how you take it. It doesn't take a genius to become a millionaire, but it takes a very smart man or woman to stay a millionaire. How do you respond to that quote?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's just financial literacy, like understanding advantages of real estate, understanding the difference between depreciating assets and appreciating assets. Um, like, I'll give you a quick story about, just the other day. I was buying my girlfriend some stuff at the mall, and we were at one of these little designer stores, and I was like, "Here, just pick out whatever you want. Like, here's some stuff. Like, I know I knew what she kind of wanted, but." Then we were hanging out. She's like, "Hey, that's a cool vest. I think that'd look good on you." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Yeah." So I tried it on. That's pretty cool. So we go to check out, and I thought I saw, like, I was like, "Wait, hold on here. Damn vest was $3,400."
Holy
And
shit.
don't get me wrong, I liked it. And true, this is a true story. This just happened. True story. It ties into exactly what you're saying. True story is, I was right there at the counter. I was buying her some stuff too. I just paid. Like, I thought I saw 300, and then I looked closer, it's 35. I was like, holy shit. Like,
Yeah.
and to me, when I left, I thought about it for 2 days straight. Actually, yeah, two
Hmm.
days straight. It bothered me. And the reason it bothered me is because I know that that vest goes to zero the moment I pay 3,500 to it for it,
That's
right?
right. That's right.
I'd rather have just paid 15,000 and bought a Rolex, because at least that I could sell for pretty close to what, if not more, depending on the type of Rolex it is. It's worth exactly what I paid for. If anything, it's an asset that holds its value. Now, you can argue appreciating or not, but it holds its value. And so just understanding that, like, clothes itself is one of the depreciating assets that we all try to go flex and show all the cool shit we have, but it's not very cool that you over for it and now it's worth nothing, right? Like, would you do that with a real estate, with a house that you're buying? No, you would not buy a house because it's a cool house and people think you have money when you buy it, and then it's worth zero after. You wouldn't do that. But it's the principle of that thought process that, even with your daily decisions. And so guess what
Mm.
happened yesterday? That vest went back to Gucci. And I got my money back, because I was like, it bothered me so much, because I'm like, I can comfortably afford it, but the principle is what bothered me the most, knowing that that's a dumb financial decision. It could have been $35, it could have been 3,500 or 35,000. It would
Yes.
have bothered me the same
Yes.
way. And so
Yeah.
that vest went back. And also, it's just not like, yeah, I liked it, but like I spend money on other things that make me a lot happier than that vest would ever would. So I think going back to what you're saying is that it's just about the being a genius to a smart person to stay a millionaire is just understanding the principles of money and understanding that the numbers, yeah, they might differ, but the decisions you make with a net worth of 100 grand are going to be roughly the same money decisions you're making with $1 million. But if you make the wrong ones, you're never going to get and progress further, right? And so, like, I think clothes is a very, very good example of something that's like you pay for it and it's worth zero. Like that. That's
Hmm.
probably if you can afford it, whatever. But for me, I'm like, shit, I'd rather take a trip to Cabo for 3,500 bucks.
Hmm. So here's another question. This is a great topic, by the way. I think the audience really likes this. When it comes to value versus cost, how do you constitute value in paying more for something that others perceive really expensive, but you know is a good value, and you can rationalize paying an exorbitant amount of money because it either holds value or goes up in value? How is that important to those growing their net worth, and how have you done it in your life?
Absolutely, yes. So I think that it first starts with studying whatever
Mm,
asset you're thinking about purchasing, right? Like even with real estate, you don't just go pick a random neighborhood, right? Like you start identifying, well, where talk to an agent, what's the data, what are the like what's the rental rates, what's the like, and you start doing the equations to understand the asset. And like if you want to buy watches, but you don't know anything about Rolexes or APs or whatever the case is, start studying them, start
right.
researching and understanding. Because like for me, my one of my I guess you could say expensive items that I purchased that people might think are crazy are firearms. And I don't think it's very crazy because statistically, I know just about every presidential cycle, right, of new president, um, there's a fear of firearms and so the prices go up. Like I've never lost money on a firearm. And so yeah, well, someone might think it's crazy to pay 2, 3 grand, 5 grand for a rifle or a pistol. I'm very comfortable doing so because I understand the asset. And I think that's
Mm,
where you see people buying certain things. Like I know guys that do that with exotic sports cars. I don't get it because I'm not in that world. I don't understand how they make money that way, but they're not doing it to lose money, right? And so
hmm.
I think it's a matter of studying the asset, and once you have that acute knowledge, that's where you can make good decisions. And if other people don't get it, well, the only difference is they just don't have the knowledge at why that's a good investment.
Mm. So here's a question too. I'm sure you get this a lot, like me. I'm assuming you get DMs all the time or messages, people asking you for help, people asking you for advice, etc. Let's say immaculate conception. You have another kid. You have a son here tomorrow, and he asks you, "Okay, Dad, what is it that you've learned in your life that you could best teach me on how to live my life the best I can?" What piece of advice could you give him?
Damn, that's deep, man. That's a good question. Wow. Um, let's see here. I would probably say that I think that making sure, especially children, are you do your absolute best to remove any self-limiting beliefs and instilling in them
Mm,
that they can truly do anything or be anybody they want to be. And that if you want to be something or you want to do something, you need to remove a time period from achieving that goal. And if you're
that's a big one.
you you'll put all your eggs in that basket, and your commitment isn't correlated to an amount of time. It's blatantly your commitment, and that there's no supplement for hard work. And
That's good.
if you work hard, you don't make the same mistakes twice, or at least you try not to make the same mistakes twice, and you never quit, you can be anything you want to be. and do
It's a good
anything you
piece of
want to do.
advice. It's a good piece of advice, Ramon. And the other thing I think is a lot of people don't understand business is a continuum, meaning it never ends. No matter how much you
Right.
have, you always desire more. No matter how much you spend, you always want to spend more. Or no matter how much you save, you always want to save more. And by removing the timeline, like you said, I think that really creates a lot of unique constructs that people can actually implement in their life, because I think a lot of people beat themselves up way too much. And how difficult is it? Here's a question I'm sure that you get too. How difficult is it not to take that lower road of comparing yourselves to others, right? Oh, he's 32, I'm 30, whatever, right? He's this wealthy and I'm older than him. How do you cope with that? And how do you not make that mistake to compare your success to other people's
Yep.
successes?
That's a good one, man. There's actually a chapter in my book that's dedicated to the comparison game. And in the comparison game, the reality is that you are people say, "No, don't compare yourself to other people." You are going to naturally compare yourself. It is a physiological, it's just a natural instinct as humans. We look and we compare, right? That's just what we do. So I think that comparing is important, but it can also be detrimental, right? So if I'm 30 years old and I'm wondering, am I doing well? Well, what's the benchmark? Well, what I consider doing
Right.
well? Sure, yeah, but I mean, if every other 30-year-old on average is worth $10 million and I'm worth half a million, well, clearly I'm not. There's something going on that I need to understand that either I'm not doing or I didn't see, or like you have to identify those correlations. Like, yeah, are there anomalies on the graph? Yes, but there's also averages. Knowing where you stand is
Mm,
important because you need to know, do I need to speed up? Right? Most of us do. We need to speed up. We need to go faster. But you have to compare at some level. But the I think the worst comparison is comparison back down. That's the one that I think doesn't get talked about enough. Most people go, don't compare yourself to Michael because blah 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 blah. That's just an excuse. No, definitely compare yourself to Michael. If you're also in your early 30s, compare and like figure out how he did
right.
what he's done if you haven't done that. But the worst thing you can do is compare yourself to other 30-year-olds that you're doing better than.
Explain that a
Once
little bit
you
more. I
start
like
going,
that.
yeah, it's the comparison game on people that are doing less or not as well because it gives you a sense of accomplishment, maybe inflates your ego. Like, oh, I'm good, like I'm doing so well. And when you start to think that you have it figured out or you've achieved more than other people, it starts to create different changes in your personality. It starts changes in your work ethic, the way you spend money. But like when you're going and meeting with somebody who is astronomically or maybe just quite a bit more wealthy or a decade in whatever their industry is, like that level of uncomfortableness you have around them because of what they've achieved and what you haven't, like that's what pushes you to go further, right? But
Mm,
it's the complete opposite, in my opinion, when you're the guy who people are looking at and saying you're doing so well, and but like that's cool and it's cool to feel good about yourself, but you never want to get caught up comparing yourself downward where, oh, I'm doing so much better than, because I think that's where we
hmm
lose a lot.
How important in your life, and we talked about this before, but I don't know if the viewership has, how important in life is your personal life, your proximity to success, and eradicating those people that are the time vampires and those trying to, disestablish what it is that you've already created?
Yeah, it's just I think it's only natural that you start to identify, whether it's conversations, situations, family members, friends that just don't serve, not going to say you, but don't serve like what you're trying to accomplish. Um, and I think that it's something that people take a little bit too. They like it's this like I have to cut somebody. I mean, it's not, you're not cutting anybody off. It's just like at some level, your circle becomes a certain caliber, your conversations become a certain caliber, your mindset becomes a certain caliber, your physical body becomes a certain caliber,
Mm,
some level, you just lose commonality. Like, I think the easiest way to understand if you lose commonality or not is, are your conversations with the people you're talking about from the past, or are they about the future? And that's
I
the
like that.
easiest way, because most people you lose commonality with, the only thing they have in common with you is the past. So that's what they talk about, and that's what your conversations revolve around, right? And
It's
so
true.
I think
Very
it's
true.
just it's just a natural phenomenon that happens when you're trying to achieve, like, you have to quiet out the noise, and a lot of times the noise can be friends, family, significant others. I mean, shit, that's just the reality, you know?
Hmm.
And I think that people that truly want to see you do well, I don't think it's a big deal. Like, I have friends that are on different paths than I am that we don't talk as much, but I'm like, yeah, they're getting after what they want to get after. That's not something they don't want to, it's not a problem about me. It's just where they're at in their life right now. It's what they're doing. Cool. And I think that we make up these scenarios like we're some villain if we, stop talking to people that don't serve any purpose in your life anymore. And it's like, that's just natural.
How do
Don't
you
overthink
learn
it.
to say how do you learn to say no to opportunities or situations that aren't fitting you? Because I
Sure.
would assume you get invited to a lot of different things, etc. And I would assume also that it becomes difficult in social norms to say no at times. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So there's a good saying, um, and actually, Tessa, right? My girlfriend,
Yeah.
she actually says this a lot to her coaching clients, and it's so powerful. And it goes, you get successful by the things you say yes to, but you stay successful by the things you say no to. And
Mm,
yes is like when you're first starting out, you're just taking every opportunity that comes your way. And like any podcast, any event, any, opportunity to meet someone, to help someone, like, you're just doing it. And that's what gets you a lot of momentum and traction, but you can't sustain that long term. So you have to
right.
have the ability to say no. And I mean, I think it's a matter of just making sure you understand what your focus are, but also understanding the ways you make money, right? Like, I know in my business, I make money in two ways: by increasing agent productivity in that are with
Hmm.
my team, and recruiting new talent to my organization. That's it. That's the two ways I make money. So my rationale for anything that I'm considering to do, to work on, to travel to, is it going to serve one of those two things? Right. And that's where a lot of my decisions are made. It's just getting really focused on, is this a value add or not? Does it serve either of those two purposes? Then no, because I can't help my current agents. I can't help my executive team. I can't help people if I'm not receiving, right? If I don't have financial resources, I don't have those things, I can't support them anymore. So it's my job as a business owner to stay focused on the ways that I best support my organization, which are identifying new opportunities to help our agents grow their income and recruiting new agents to our organization. That's it. And
Mm,
that's how I make my decisions on what. Now, has that always been the case? No.
hmm.
But as time goes on, you start realizing that, hey, that's not the most pretty, sexy, like, coolest thing anyone's ever thought of, but that's how I make money, and so I have to stick with it.
Now, obviously, at a young age, you had a mentor or mentors in your life. Can you describe them, or maybe the top one or two? And what did you learn from them that you could teach the audience and or help them with?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, one of my favorite mentors, well, start off. So I talked a little bit about my dad, but I mean, I think that the upbringing is like, that's just a crucial part, of the intangibles, to show up on time, to shake people's hand, to do what you say you're going to do, um, to work hard, to treat people the best you possibly can, right? Like, those things go so much farther, than any of us can ever imagine. But outside of him, business wise, which he did teach me a lot about getting started in business, but I was a big MFCEO podcast listener by Andy Frisella. I mean, it was so crazy. We'd listen to that podcast, and like at nighttime and then meet in the morning and be like, did you hear what he just, like, we're going through exactly what the guy just said. He just told us what to do. Like, we would almost like go home at night, listen to the podcast, come back and like regroup on what we just listened. And that really helped my first couple years in business, like keep it afloat and keep it growing, was that podcast, which is crazy, but that was some of hands down the best business advice I've ever received. Um, and then I think other and Andy Frisella, for you guys who don't know, he's just a good old country boy from St. Louis, Missouri, who, you know, took the long way around, which is usually the shortest way home, and built a supplement company from the ground up. And it's one of the largest in the U.S. And I mean, it's just an incredible story of culture and perseverance. But that's someone I'd highly recommend learning from. Um, and then I would also, and he has a very cool, he has a way of delivering messages that I definitely it resonates with me. I would say the other ones have come from just business relationships on other people I've met. And I think what's important about mentors is that you don't have to have a mentor for just one, and that mentor to encompass all areas of your life. Um, I think that you can find mentorship, or you can find support in multiple areas with multiple mentors. Like, there's some people who I respect. They work with their significant other. They have grown massive businesses with their wife or husband. I respect their relationship advice, and that's who I take my relationship advice from. Or vice versa, you have somebody who scaled a real estate team to, doing 30, 40 million dollars in revenue across the US. I'm taking my growing my real estate team advice from that person, right? And I think that's super important. If you wouldn't trade places with them in that aspect of their life, then don't take the advice. And
Mm,
I could go down the list, but there's quite a few. But it's all different areas of my life, not just like one mentor for one area.
hmm hmm Now, how important would you say your personal life is to your business success?
Personal life, how important is it? Um, it's very important. I think that the personal life is where a lot of distractions happen, and things that can negatively affect your business. I mean, I just did a post about this the other day that regardless if you're single, married, in a relationship, whatever the case is, divorced, um, you can't have battles at home.
Hmm
You have battles in the business world. Like, you're just going to get worn out and something's going to give. And so
hmm
I think, like, actually your personal life is the foundation to be able to create a successful business. And when you're first starting off, at least for me, like, I realized really early on that the top performers and the people who are making real money on Friday, Saturday night, they're in bed with their family watching a movie.
Mm, hmm
They're
It's
getting
very
up and
true.
going, they're going up and going to the gym in the morning, and they're getting to the office on Saturday. And some of the most successful people I know, honestly, have the most boring personal life routines. Now, their personal life's badass because they think of their financial capabilities that the average person will not do. But their routines are very strict. They're not
hmm
glamorous by any means,
Mm,
and their personal life is optimized to support. And that's a key word, optimized to support their business.
mm,
For example, their gym routine, their supplements, the accessibility to their where they go work out, their laundry, their maintenance on their house, their landscaping, their food, their vehicles. Like, everything is optimized so they can put a majority of their focus and intention each day into growing their business. And
mm.
I think the personal life is actually one of the keys to staying successful. Is like, when you have the personal life in check, I believe that the business, you have a lot more opportunities to create a business that you desire to be a part of.
It's very true. And it's funny because I think I can attribute a lot of my financial success to personalized stability. Because whenever I made my most of my money, it was when I had a stable personal life. And whenever I made dumb choices, it was problems at home. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. And the other thing I think is important to touch upon, I wanted to hear your opinion on this. Um, as you start making money, obviously you want to acquire things, right? You start getting the nice car, you get the nice Gucci vest, you get the Rolex, you get the whatever, the house, the this, the that, and the other. And then you start to realize, at least for me, once you have all that stuff, the utility and value of it really isn't that great. It's like, how many people are going to your house and seeing your big ass house? How many people are actually looking at your car and knowing how much you spend? How many people are looking at your 20 watches going, wow, he's got a new watch? How does that matter? And why do you think a lot of younger people or people that haven't found success in their business still equate value to that, and maybe why they shouldn't?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, there's a good saying that says, "Don't try to don't spend all your money trying to prove you're rich to poor people."
Mm.
And I think that's something that everyone goes through an iteration of, or not everyone, but a lot of people do, of keeping up with the Jones, as they say, right? Um, but I think it's just a matter of again going back to getting around and getting in the right rooms and meeting people. I mean, I know guys that are billionaires that don't have a single watch, like not one. I know guys that are my age, younger, that have businesses doing 50, $60 million of revenue, and they still drive a vehicle that's kind of beat up, honestly, that they've had for a while. But I mean, it all, you start getting around those people and you almost feel silly.
That's right. That's
You get
right.
around people that have real money. Yeah, that AP they spent 80K on, but that 80K to them is like spending $800 to you. Do you know what I'm saying? So they're not
Hmm.
looking at those watches as, oh, this is some big investment. This is just something they picked up on the way to, freaking on the air to the airport or something, right? Or they had their buddy ship it into their office. I mean, it's not like some big event. And I think that when you get around people that have real wealth, you start to understand that a lot of that stuff is almost like laughable. That if you don't have the disposable income, that you're spending your money on that. And there's a good saying that I learned from the CEO of who's helped me with some other business endeavors, Rick Campo from Camden Property Trust, and he told me always trade your cash for equity. It's like
Mm.
that's what I've done my entire life. And this is a guy who's inducted into the Houston Business Hall of Fame. And what he means by that is that you have the cash, just keep putting it into equity, stock, real estate, your business. Those are all the best equities you can, like, and there's other things too, obviously, but trade it for that, because that keeps growing and cash does it. And the things you usually buy cash that aren't any of those assets end up going down in value anyway. I think when you understand that, I think you also understand that no one who's a serious business owner or someone who you want to do business with is going to choose not to do business with you because you don't have a watch on, or you don't have a fancy sports car, or they don't care. It's business. And so I think that once you understand that, no, people who you actually want to get in front of and know and talk to and work with, that they could give two shits about your car, house, or watch, I think a lot of the things start coming to they start being a more clear picture for you on how to spend money.
It's a great point. Now, obviously, I want to wish you happy Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving
Oh
is
yeah.
tomorrow, and happy Thanksgiving to the viewers. What are you most thankful for at this point in your life, Ramon?
Um, Geez, I'd probably say good health, number one. I mean, there's times where I've got sick before. Now I'm not talking like bad sickness, just not feeling good, and you're like, man, holy shit, this is like you can't do anything. And so I'd say good health, and then I would also say just a um, very thankful for the support I have from my family, number one, but then also from my real estate company. Um, a lot of people that have been with us for years, and I can't, I don't do anything alone. And so
Mm.
when I'm on like stage or speaking or something like that, someone says you built XYZ, and I'm like, well, first of all, I don't build anything on my own, so we built.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, definitely thankful for my team at our company and all of our agents, because without them, I mean, I'm just one guy, but I need all their help to do what we're doing. So that's probably what I'm most thankful for.
And if there was a quote or a saying or something that could capsulate what we learned today that the audience could take away, what do you think that would be?
Man, a quote. Let me think here. Mm, I don't know. I mean, that's a really good question. What do you got one?
You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Henry David Thoreau, and it's launch yourself on every wave, find your opportunity in each moment. And for me, what I've realized in my life is you got to be really thankful for the moments you're in, these conversations. This is why, Matt takes the time out of his day to produce this. Big thanks to Matt Culhane, and why I enjoy this so much. And I think a lot of people come back and watch these is because you learn a lot from others taking the time and being present to share during these moments.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the biggest thing. And the other quote I always talk about, which is the ending quote of my book, which is, you're never the most successful person that you think you're going to be. Rather, you are the least successful that you're willing to accept. Like, what are you going to accept in your life? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's the truth, because I think a lot of us and those listening in beat ourselves up of, oh, I'm not successful enough, I'm not rich enough, I don't have the GCI that I want, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. But in reality, when you stop and think, it's like you've accomplished a lot. You being here on this call with us or watching this today is taking a moment in your life to learn from Ramon's life or mine. And I think that is a gift that hopefully keeps giving. How do you respond to something like that? How has that affected your life?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, while you were saying that, I was thinking very, very hard about a quote. And I think
Mm.
that this quote I'm going to tell you is going to fall in line with my response would be. Um, and it's 90% of success can be boiled down to consistently doing the obvious thing for an uncommonly long period of time without convincing yourself that you're smarter than you really are.
I like that one. Who said that? Do you know?
I don't, but I've seen it I mean, I don't know like who the original one. I've seen it different people post it and whatnot. But when I read that, I mean, I was just like, this summarizes in the best way I possibly could think about um, our whole conversation. Is it
Mm.
goes back to the boring thing. It goes back to consistency, uncommonly long period of time. I talked about removing a time period from whatever it is you want to accomplish, and then without convincing yourself, which I did quite a few times in early on, which I referenced, was convince myself that I knew more than someone who'd been doing this for 10 years and I was in 10 months,
Mm.
right? I mean, it doesn't make sense. And even when you get to that 10 years, still not convincing yourself that you're smarter than you really are. And I think that that quote, I mean, I'd have to agree with it 110% because I've not only like felt it myself, but I think that it encompasses a lot of shortcomings that we all have as we're trying to grow our businesses.
Well, Ramon, hey man, thanks for taking the time. It's always a lot of fun to catch up with you, and I'm
Yeah,
glad we
man,
get to catch up when you're online and we can help share these stories with others. What's the best
for
way for
sure.
people to follow you or get in contact with you or get to
Yeah,
know you more?
Instagram's the best way. Yeah, Instagram's the best way. It's Ramon.Casaus, first name dot last name. Yeah, that's probably the place I share the most content at these days.
Well, happy holidays, man. And hey, I want to get your
Yeah.
girlfriend on here to teach us more about marketing. You think that's something
Oh
she'd be
man,
game with?
she's good. Yeah, I'll tell her. I'll make sure I'll get you guys set up. Yeah, no, that'll be a good one, man. You guys really enjoy that.
I like that. Well, hey, man, happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, and let's touch base here soon. Thank you guys
All
for
right, man.
for watching. We appreciate it.
Happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you.
See you guys.